It's midterm season and spring break is still a few weeks away, so in today's video I'm going to show you how to do a reset to spring clean your brain to feel less anxiety and overwhelm. First up, we've got method number 1 to ground yourself. Grounding yourself involves tapping into your 5 senses. So I invite you to take a minute to tap into those 5 senses, look around the room, notice what can you see, are there any objects in your view? What can you hear? Are there any sounds? What can you feel? For example, maybe you pause for a moment to feel your feet on the ground or feel the fabric of your clothing. Is there anything that you can smell? Any smells in the air? Taking a minute to tap into those 5 senses can give us a pause and give us an opportunity to ground ourselves in the present moment. Another strategy I like for grounding ourselves is something I learned from the life coach Victoria Albina, which is all about getting into our body by taking a minute to look at our own hand. You hold up your hand, take a look at it, and say, "This is my hand. This is my hand." And Victoria Albina suggests to tap your hand and say, "This is my hand." You can tap your arm and say, "This is my arm. This is my arm. This is my chest. This is my chest." Now, it might seem a little bit silly, but it's actually a really great strategy to get into your body and to notice the sensations in your body. And I know a lot of people who practice this strategy when they're feeling anxiety and overwhelm, maybe in the privacy of their own homes or in their cars, and it can really help to kind of ground their senses and bring them back to the present moment. And then finally, a strategy that I've learned about from polyvagal theory relates to resetting our nervous system by using our peripheral vision. So the next method I suggest is to keep your head facing forward and then to look over to your right for 30 seconds using your peripheral vision. It's going to feel a little strange. You might even feel a tiny bit of tension in your head. And then after 30 seconds, you want to switch over and look to the left without moving your head as much as possible. Keep your head forward and still and look over using your peripheral vision. Now, I don't know much about the science behind this, but this strategy really works for me to have a moment of reset and grounding myself. And I think it has to do with the fact that we use our peripheral vision only when we're feeling safe, only when we're feeling kind of grounded, not when we're feeling under threat. And as I've talked about in previous videos, sometimes when we have assignments that can feel really heightened in our emotional responses, like we're feeling anxious about something such as a midterm exam, we might feel that sense of fight or flight, which leads us to not be able to stay grounded in the present moment. And this is one of the strategies that I like to use. In fact, I used it this morning before preparing to create this video. Up next, we've got method number 2, which is completing the stress response cycle. So after you've grounded yourself, you can take on the slightly more active task of completing the stress response cycle. Now, I first learned about the stress response cycle from the amazing book Burnout by fellow educators Emily and Amelia Nagoski. I highly recommend this book. I have read that book several times, and every single time I get a lot out of it. And in their book, they talk about how there's a difference between the actual stressor, the thing that is causing our feeling of stress, and then dealing with the stress itself. And dealing with the stress itself has to do with how we process the physiological response, the response within our bodies. And some of the methods that the Nagoski sisters recommend for completing the stress response cycle are things like, obviously, deep breathing is a great place to start. Now, we know, of course, breathing, taking deep breaths can be a grounding experience too, so you can combine this with the previous method that I suggested. But also, recommendations from the book Burnout include things like moving your body. And this doesn't need to turn into starting a whole new exercise regimen for the spring semester, but it can be something as simple as going for a walk, maybe taking a hike, whatever type of movement is available to you. And during times of heightened stress, sometimes we want our movement to also kind of mirror the body states that we'd like to get into. So I'm a big fan of dancing it out. And also I'm a fan of things like yin yoga, or some of you may have heard of non-sleep deep rest protocols, as mentioned on Andrew Huberman's amazing podcast, Huberman Lab. And some of the other methods for completing the stress response cycle involve laughing. That's actually one of my favorite ways to reset my nervous system and process some stress. So you can check out some comedy specials or watch some of your favorite old comedy movies, or even just, chat with a friend who you're guaranteed to laugh with, because that's another strategy that is recommended for completing the stress response cycle, is to talk to a friend or a loved one who can be a compassionate listener. And so if you're a student, you might also have these services available to you. There's usually some kind of counseling services. Personal counseling is often available to students. So I encourage you to check those out. Now is a great time to make use of those services, especially if they're already included in your student fees. And two of my favorite strategies for completing the stress response cycle is positive social interaction, or, as I like to call it, cuddles. So this can involve something like practicing the 6-second kiss from the Gottman Institute, which is exactly what it sounds like. You kiss someone that you love for 6 seconds, and you could also try out the 20-second hug. I'm a really big fan of the 20-second hug. It doesn't sound like very much, but 20 seconds is actually a really nice, good amount of time to be embraced and to embrace another person. And if that's not available to you, you can always substitute with one of the best possible methods for completing the stress response cycle, and that is cuddling with an animal. There's a lot of research behind this, that animal interactions and cuddles, they reduce our stress levels by increasing our levels of oxytocin. So that is one of my favorite strategies, and I practice that pretty much every single day, much to my cat's often chagrin. So now that we've grounded ourselves and we've completed some stress response cycles, which, don't forget, you can do these anytime that's available to you, any day. It's a regular habit to get into that I highly recommend, especially for students that find themselves feeling often overwhelmed and anxious. We can lead to our third method for reducing our stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, and performing a spring cleaning on our brains, and that is to take a dopamine detox. Now, you might have heard of this term, a dopamine detox, in another way, such as taking a screen fast or a tech-free day. This is often a challenge that I pose to my students every semester. We have one day of the semester. Usually we plan for a Saturday because that's available to more people when they have to be on their computers for work or for school throughout the work week. Is to take a full day, if possible, off from all technology. Now, I recognize it's a little ironic to suggest a screen-free day when I'm coming to you from a screen here on YouTube, but I actually practice this semi-regularly, where I will put all my technology away, and I often tell people in my life ahead of time, hey, I'm not available on Saturday. And for my students, I recommend that they start off with smaller chunks of time, but at a minimum, in order for this to really perform that anxiety reduction spring cleaning of your brain, I recommend a minimum of about 4 hours of screen-free time. And it's going to be a little tough at first. Every semester when my students and I do this screen fast, they write about it in their journals the next week. And one of the things that I hear from them is that it's really hard to do. It's really hard to turn off the technology, put things away, and to avoid screens. It's actually not even possible for all people to participate in this activity. But if you really want to reduce your stress, your anxiety, and your overwhelm during this busy midterm season, give it a try. And oftentimes what my students find is they end up doing things that they wouldn't have ever have done unless they had been asked to try this dopamine detox screen-free Saturday activity. So they might get out some art projects that they set aside. A lot of times we'll go out into nature and go for like a walk or a hike. Our animals always love this screen-free day because we tend to interact with them a lot more. And some of my students just take the opportunity to just give their brain a break from taking in new information. I think in particular during this time when we're getting so much input, so much information, our brains actually need time to sort of go offline and to let our minds wander. And there's some really cool research that's written about in the book Bored and Brilliant by the writer Manoush Zomorodi about how when we give our brains a break from input, that's often when our most creative ideas occur to us. So I often think about how my best ideas occur to me right before I'm about to fall asleep. Sometimes when I'm in the middle of taking a shower, I'll have a brilliant idea, and there's actual research that points to the fact that when we give our brains a chance to slow down, to stop taking in information, to let our minds wander, we often have major breakthroughs, or at the very least, we have some creative inspiration. So if you're interested, I'm going to be doing a full day screen fast next Saturday, March 18th, 2023. So let me know if you want to join me in the comments, and we'll write about it next week. We'll talk about it next week. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what kinds of ideas come from that experience for me and hoping to turn them into future videos. So if you'd like to let me know some ideas for future videos, feel free to pop those into the comments as well. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thanks for watching.